Hey guys, it's Tim, and because of the reception I got on my top 13 comic book animated series list, I've decided to do another list related to animation. I'm gonna keep it in that same realm of superheroes, but this time I'm going to remove the comic book element. Because even though there's been a lot of great animated series that have been adaptations of previously established superheroes, there have also been a lot of them that have featured their own original superhero. And that's what I'll be counting down today, the top 5 animated series featuring an original superhero. And just like last time, I'm going to put a few rules in place to help understand better why I'm putting certain things on the list but not others. Number 1, the series has to be about the superhero and not just feature a superhero as a regular cast member or an occasional supporting cast member. Number 2, the series has to have superhero trappings. It can't just be an action show about characters with special powers. In the same way that I wouldn't put One Piece as a superhero show, I'm not going to put shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender or Kim Possible onto this list. Even though they have superpowers or use gadgets, they're not really superheroes. And number 3, as always, only one entry per series to stop the list from being bogged down by one particular series over another. With that being said, let's count down the top 5 original superhero animated series. Number 5. My Life as a Teenage Robot. In a similar vein to the likes of Astro Boy, this series features a character who is a superhero, an entirely mechanical superhero, but also has to deal with being programmed to be a child, or in this case, a teenager. Because for whatever reason in the early 2000s, fictional scientists were under the impression that making a super weapon that was also a teenage girl would somehow make it easier to control. Looking at you, scientists who made X-23. But back more on topic, the series is about Jenny Wakeman, real name XJ9, who is discovered by her 2 neighbors, and after that decides to go into the world as an actual teenager, while also doing superheroic things and saving the world on the side. It's your basic robot learning to be human story, but with the twist of her already having a very human personality to start off with, just not knowing human experiences. What makes the show work is its main cast, because they're all extremely likable, especially Jenny herself, who is just really hard to dislike with her personality, her voice, and all the different things that she can do. The show also has a very distinct style to it, where everyone has their own body type, and it has this sort of kind of retro 50s flair to it, which I enjoy. What stops the show from being higher on the list is that, while it is a superhero show, its primary focus is on Jenny having human experiences and the various misadventure and comedy that comes from that. And also because of all the shows that are going to be on this list, this show probably has the weakest rogues gallery. There are some notable exceptions to this, but just not as good as the other ones that'll be on the list later. But with that being said, I still recommend watching the show if you have the opportunity and haven't yet. Number 4. Danny Phantom. If you need a recap on what this show is about, you can always go and watch the theme song of it, but for those who don't want to stop the video to watch that, here's a breakdown. Danny Phantom is the child of 2 bumbling, but still somehow competent when it counts ghost hunters, who build a portal in order to view what's called the Ghost Zone, another dimension where ghosts exist in this universe. However, when they plug it in, it doesn't work and they give up. But Danny goes into the portal to see what the issue is, and finds out that the on and off switch was built inside of the portal. So he hits it, which turns the portal on with him inside, and, according to the show, infuses his DNA with ghost ectoplasm. Or in other terms, he kind of dies. This experience gives Danny the ability to shift into a ghost form, which he dubs Danny Phantom, and decides to use his powers as a superhero, being a comic book fan and being a generally good person. And this series has what I was saying before when I was talking about My Life as a Teenage Robot. Danny Phantom has an incredibly memorable rogues gallery. Even one-off villains like Vortex or Nocturne are memorable. But there is one thing that kind of prevents this show from being any higher on my list. And that would be Danny's friends Tucker and Sam. And the fact that, looking back on this series years later, both of them are almost complete assholes. To the point that I'm under the complete impression that if either of them had gotten the ghost powers, they just flat out would have become supervillains. Hell, if you want a microcosm for why Sam is such an awful person, just watch the episode Memory Blank. It starts off with her literally wanting to commit acts of eco-terrorism. Also, the show has kind of a weak finale with Phantom Planet, but only because it's kind of a microcosm of everything that's wrong with the show all rolled into one. But with that being said, I still find the show enjoyable just solely off of Danny himself, his parents, and his rogues gallery, and for those reasons I recommend checking the series out. Killing off your main character in the opening credits has never been this much fun. Number 3. Darkwing Duck. Coming to us straight from the Disney afternoon, this series is a mixture of standard superhero fare, comedy, and sort of pulp-style hero action, even having the main character's name be a reference to the Shadow. The series stars Drake Mallard, an unassuming suburban dad who has an egotistical drive for fame and fortune and decides to become a superhero by the guise of Darkwing Duck. With his adopted daughter Gosselin and the help of Launchpad McQuack, who originally came from the series DuckTales, he fights against all sorts of crime and villainy, while attempting to bumble his way to fame every step of the way. I always like the premise behind this series of this totally egotistical guy who just wants fame and fortune going out and trying to stop all of these larger-than-life threats in all of these different comedic ways. It's like if Daffy Duck was a superhero, but done by a rival company instead. What makes Darkwing Duck likable despite being such an opportunist is that he does have a good heart when it comes down to it, and he really is sort of like a big child trying to play superhero. Plus you have this really great supporting cast behind him with Gosselin and Launchpad, and all of the awesome villains that he goes up against on a weekly basis. It is definitely more comedy skewed than straight up superhero action, but with that it does it very well, as with a lot of early Disney afternoon shows. So if you missed out on watching it, I definitely go back and look at the terror that quacks in the night. Number 2. The Powerpuff Girls. Before anyone questions it, I mean the original 1998 series and not the one that started up earlier this year. Professor Utonium, wanting to create the perfect little girl out of the traditional things that girls are made of, sugar, spice, and everything nice, accidentally smashes into a vial of Chemical X that was by his mixing station, which gets into the mixture and ends up creating the Powerpuff Girls, Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup. All of them with fantastic powers like flight, invulnerability, heat vision, super breath, all of that kind of stuff. So I will give Professor Utonium credit that he was just trying to make a girl as opposed to trying to make a weapon that was a teenage girl. This is an awesome series from the early days of Cartoon Network, and especially in its early episodes had a lot of very snappy and clever writing. The series itself is very unassuming to people who have never watched it before. On the surface, it's a series about 3 kindergarten-age girls, and its logos feature hearts and heavy amounts of pink, so a lot of people assume that it's a series that is geared towards younger girls. And while it can be, with it having sort of cutesier stuff and having the girls be at such a young age, it is an excessively violent show. I mean, the main credits have teeth and blood flying everywhere, and Mojo Jojo, every time he gets beaten up, you see his brain exposed through his helmet. Like the girls themselves, the series is definitely more than meets the eye. And like with previous entries on our list, the series has a lot of diverse and interesting villains for the girls to go up against. From a monkey who is mutated through science to give him super intelligence, to the devil himself. With supporting cast members like Miss Bellum or the mayor or even the narrator himself, which really give the series a lot of life and personality that makes it stand out compared to its other contemporaries. There's even an entire episode of the show where halfway through all the dialogue is replaced with lyrics from Beatles songs, so I recommend checking it out even just for that. It's definitely a very high-flying and exciting series that shows just how to make a series like this work for any kind of audience. And like with last time, here are some honorable mentions for shows that just missed making it onto the list for one reason or another. First off, we have American Dragon Jake Long. Let's face it, for as fun as this show could be, them attempting to be cool with Jake's dialogue was dated even back when the series came out in 2005. I still recommend watching the show, but Jake's faux street dialogue really makes it hard to get through certain scenes of the show, and I end up skipping around when I watch it just because it is really that painful to listen to. Next up, we have Randy Cunningham, 9th Grade Ninja. A more recent series onto this list, it kind of suffers from a similar problem to Jake Long. Some of the characters' dialogue attempting to be hip and connecting to the audience just ends up falling flat. It's still a fun series that I feel unfortunately fell through the cracks, partially because it was on Disney XD and not on something like Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon or even the main Disney Channel. But it doesn't really do a lot different with the secret hero things that Jake Long and Danny Phantom did before it. It still feels like it's in that similar vein, so if you like either of those shows, you'll probably like this one. It just doesn't really stand out beyond that. And finally, we have Miraculous, The Adventures of Ladybug and Cat Noir, also known as The Miraculous Ladybug. A fairly recent CG series coming to us from France, the series just never really clicked with me like other series did. But one thing I do give it a lot of credit for is the expression work on its CG characters, especially for a TV budget. They're very expressive and very distinct from one another. I also recommend the series because even though its main theme song is in English, they mispronounce Miraculous as Miraculous. So if nothing else, just check out the theme song to hear that. But with that out of the way, here's my top choice for original superhero animated series. Number 1. Ben 10. Originally dropping in 2005, this series ended up becoming Cartoon Network's flagship series from that point until 2010 when Adventure Time took that position from it. The series focuses on Ben Tennyson, a 10-year-old boy with a hero complex who, while on a road trip with his grandpa and cousin over the summer, has an alien watch crash down next to him in the middle of the woods, which attaches himself to his wrist. The watch gives Ben the ability to transform into different aliens, originally 10, hence the name Ben 10, which gives him all of the powers and abilities of that particular race of alien. With the help of his cousin Gwen and his grandpa Max, who has a secretive past, Ben goes from place to place on his road trip and has to fight against different threats posing against that particular area. And the threats can be anything from extraterrestrial to mutant to magic to even just opportunistic humans. And because of the diversity in the amount of threats that Ben went up against, he has a very interesting rogues gallery, especially in this first season, and it created a lot of the most memorable villains of the entire series. In fact, that's one thing that was kind of lost with Alien Force and Ultimate Alien, attempting to streamline all of Ben's mythos into being alien threats as opposed to being a variety of things like they were in the first season, and went back to being an omniverse. And speaking of sequel series, the reason why the original makes it onto the list and not any of its sequel series is because it's the most universally beloved and has a lot of the best things from the franchise all in one place. The later seasons are honestly very divisive amongst the fan base of the series. But talking about Ben 10 and its sequel series is a topic for another day should you guys be interested in hearing me talk about that. But right now, focusing on the original series itself, its animation is incredibly strong and holds up even today, even looking better than a lot of what's seen in its later seasons. One of the strengths of the series to me is its writing. Ben and Gwen are both 10 years old, and they feel like 10-year-olds. They're bratty, they constantly fight against one another, but deep down they do have good hearts and want to do what's right, even if they don't always know what that is. Grandpa Max is also a very good guardian figure to them, being stern when he needs to be, but also being very caring and guiding them through all of this different stuff with the knowledge of his past, which we find out more about as the series goes on. I haven't gotten a chance to check out the reboot series that also came out this year, so I can't really speak towards the quality of that. But if you want to check to see where this series all began, you won't be disappointed with the original Ben 10. And those are my top 5 original superhero animated series. But what do you guys think about this? What are your top 5 superhero animated series that aren't based on any previously existing comics or any previously existing franchises? Well, let us know down in the comments, and until next time, this has been Tim from the Hybrid Network, signing out.